Well, it finally happened, you guys. After months and months of speculation, Toronto FC has finally terminated the contracts of both Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne. Let's talk about Insigne first. He finished his Toronto FC career with 76 matches, including 66 starts, scoring 19 goals and registering 18 assists. Now, I'm sure that those numbers are already sparking some reaction. But Ollie, I'll start with you here. How, if you can, would you summarize his time in Toronto?
I think summarizing it, like, you can pretty much do it in one sentence, which is to say that he's the worst signing in MLS history. It's as simple as that. And he was probably, until a few days ago when they terminated it, one of the worst contracts in world football in terms of what he was being paid relative to the production he was giving them. So it's been an absolute disaster. I think that much is obviously obvious by this point, and we'd kind of just been waiting for it to come where that contract would expire either next summer or they'd decide to cut him loose. And it's been a while coming, I think, that they've made that decision. So in terms of how we got here and what went wrong, I think, it's easy to fixate at times with Insigne on the attitude and the body language, which often wasn't very good on the fields. Some of the rifts behind the scenes and falling outs he seemed to have had, particularly in the Bob Bradley era. For me, I look much more at the football side with Insigne. I think, to be frank, and we talked about this a bit in preseason when they were going through this process of trying to offload him, I just don't think he has it anymore. Like, physically, it's not there, and that's resulted in a lot of injuries that have kept him out of the team. And when he has been on the field, to me, it's looked like he struggled to kind of keep up with the pace of play, to cope with the week in, week out demands of MLS, particularly with the travel and the different types of field you have to play on in this league. And so the performances, while there's been kind of bits of quality sprinkled in here and there, they've largely been underwhelming and certainly not good enough for the amount of money that he's being paid and the DP status. So, I think the most important thing for TFC now is just that it's over. This has been bleeding out for a while, to be honest, and I think they've got some damage to undo, but at least now we can draw a line under this and move on, and hopefully TFC fans can look forward to a better era ahead.
It's a situation where you're thinking this should have happened in February, March, April. The fact that we're getting into July, like, you're waking up. Like, we can't mince words. This is a toxic relationship, or this was a toxic relationship that will have a lasting impression for a while on this club. Like, I understand that he's gone, but in terms of paying him all that he was paying and for the product that he gave, it was actually abysmal. Like, that is the only word I can think of. I'll talk about Insigne and his career for a quick second. It's like, which club is saying, you know what, yeah, this is the type of guy I want in my squad. I want him to absolutely make our team better and take us somewhere and add, because that's what players do. That's literally playing, being around the game. You get additions. You try to get as many additions and positives as you can to flow through a season. You can't look at Insigne and say that. You're waiting for, like, the shoe to drop. You're looking at him as a negative. I mean, I can think from TFC and the MLSE's perspective that you're glad that it's severed, but man, that was a crater. That was a situation that you look at, and we will look at a decade from now and be like, those are some dark times and a dark cloud, and what a payday. Almost feels like extortion. Like, it literally a shakedown. It does. Think about what he was getting paid for what he was doing on and off the pitch, and Ollie and Mac. I'm just like, wow. I'm gonna
disagree with that, because he didn't draft that contract himself. Toronto FC did. They got to take responsibility. It cost Bill Manning his job, obviously. This signing inevitably. I don't think they really scouted this player properly. I think they said, well, it's Lorenzo Insigne. He plays for Italy. He's played at the highest level. What do we need to really find out here? And they didn't get anything like what they were getting. So, not to sympathize with Insigne, because he's made a lot of money for not doing very much, as Jordan illustrated. But it's the club who put that contract on the table and offered it to him.
It's true.
Jordan, you mentioned just a second ago, this is something that you feel should have happened in February. Why do you think it took so long? And what do you see being the turning point here? Like, what was sort of the nail in the coffin for them?
I have no clue.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about Rob Fraser being the head coach coming in. That has to be a situation where someone told him, like, don't worry, this will be handled. The fact that it's handled now in July, if I'm him, I'm like, well, okay, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Like, now we're starting fresh in July. Like, obviously the season's like playoffs is not on the table for TFC. Like, you're trying to rebuild, even though they didn't call it that, and you're happy because I said the only relatable thing I can say was a toxic relationship that is now severed. So you're happy.
Yeah.
But it plays through your mind all the madness that happened to this point.
Of course, yeah.
And I just don't know why it took so long. I really, like, from what I've seen and people I've asked, like, there hasn't been a clear answer. I guess obviously maybe he just couldn't.
It must be something financial, like something in the structure of his contracts that makes it more palatable to do it now than earlier, I would guess. Ultimately, you got to get the MLSE board to approve paying someone to go away, right? So I would imagine there has to be some kind of reason they're willing to do that now that wasn't the case 6 months ago, because it made no sense to keep him this season.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think you guys co-designed the graphic on One Soccer worst contract in sports history. You guys were like having on that graphic.
It's bad, man. But like you said, like Ali said, it's not his fault, right?
Well, some of it is his fault. Let's talk.
It's not completely his fault. He signed on a dotted line, and
yeah, it's a two-way street though. We could go back and forth for a while. Let's get into Bernardeschi and his 99 career appearances across all competition. He recorded 26 goals and 22 assists. Jordan, how will you remember him?
You know, it's weird because I think about it and I'm smiling right now just because he brought a little bit, right? Like, I know this wasn't a perfect marriage. I know that if I had to pick a player to make a difference, am I picking Bernardeschi? I'm not. I don't think the system suited him. I don't think he had the players around him. I also personally just don't think he's a true difference maker. I think he's a very talented player. But I think if you're going to go for a DP, I think how you select them and how they're going to make players better around them should be probably the biggest reason why you sign someone. But at least he tried to do something. He tried to connect. He tried to make sure to take over games. Probably too much to his detriment, where it was like tunnel vision and he was only thinking about his stats and making a difference. But for me, that's better than a guy in Insigne that just didn't look up for it the majority of the time that he was there. So I don't know. It's bittersweet. And I think with the fans, that's probably the situation as well. They're like, yeah, Insigne can go, but like Werner could stay. But it's always just the fee that's attached to Mac and Ollie that makes this whole situation so peculiar. It's like how much money they're getting for what they're giving. It just seemed wrong in many ways.
Jordan's right. It is more of a mixed kind of legacy, I think, for Bernardeschi. Personally, I think they're absolutely right to get rid of him as well. And that may have been, in some ways, the more complicated one because of that contract extension he had through to 2028. So I wouldn't say it's a surprise, but it was less kind of a given, I think. I think there will be some supporters who are happy to see the back of both. And I think there'll be some who, like Jordan said, think that this guy tried, that he wasn't always playing in very good teams, didn't get a lot of help. And I get that to an extent. Like he agreed to play wing back last year, which I think was a bit of a sacrifice for the team. He performed pretty well in that role. He was an MLS All-Star for whatever you think that's worth in terms of his performances. I would just say this, and probably some people aren't going to like this, so don't shoot the messenger, but this is just kind of the feeling that I got with Bernardeschi throughout his time at TFC. I think, some people saw or what they perceived to be real effort on the pitch from Bernardeschi, real kind of affinity for the city of Toronto, and they gravitated towards that and liked that. I think there was a feeling inside the club from what I kind of heard and felt, and I certainly know that at least one head coach felt this way, and I think it was probably multiple, that all of that was a little bit performative with Bernardeschi, and it was a bit more kind of all about me than maybe he presented himself as in public. So take that for whatever you think it's worth, but I don't think that there will be many people unhappy to see the back of Bernardeschi within the club compared to maybe some of the supporters who, he'd become quite popular with.
Right. Well, that kind of mentality doesn't have any longevity. So I think you're completely right in making that conclusion. Buying out these players, that's $20 million in salaries gone. So with these
a lot of money.
Two massive contracts off the books, whether it's more, I don't know, mindful signings or building back home support, where does TFC go from here, Jordan?
Tapping into the pipeline for me. I think the biggest thing that got overlooked with these signings was the fact that the academy took a major hit. And I just think about it, and I'll be biased, and anyone from Montreal or BC or Alberta, you can hit me up and say, Jordan, you're completely wrong. But Toronto, the GTA, is a talent hub. There are other pockets in Canada, absolutely. But come on, look at the women's national team, look at the men's national team, look at just people that have come from this area. Like, tap into that. Make sure that these players that are playing academy football can actually get a real chance of going into the first team. I'll pick up two names, or we could go down a long list. But there's a Jaden Nelson that's 22, that was just at the Gold Cup, that is playing substantial minutes for Vancouver Whitecaps, and he was at Toronto FC. I know he wasn't a finished product then, but it was just one example of someone popping in. I'll give another one, an Ali Ahmed, who had to go all the way across this beautiful country to go get a look at Vancouver Whitecaps 2. And now for me, it's probably a lock to go in and play substantial minutes at a World Cup in 2026 and plays for Vancouver Whitecaps. The whole, players slipping through the cracks at academy level for Toronto FC, find a way to make sure that you have enough players that are stepping into the first team, and then you can buy your big player, your cash cow, your DPs. But I still think there's enough to frame this franchise to have these talented players that are going throughout the ranks play for the national team. And you're not trying to gamble on one a year. There could be a couple or a handful if you just treat them correctly and invest properly into the academy. So I hope that's a part of the plan moving forward, because over the last few years, I would say, it's an area that's been neglected, and there's just no need for it because this is a talent hub.
Yeah, last few years, I'd say their entire history. At times, TFC have they've never built a functional club for me. Like, at times, they've had a very functional first team, a more than functional first team when they won the title. Like, they've built good teams. They've never built the club. And it's pretty shocking, to be honest, the amount of talent that's come through Toronto in the past 10 or 15 years that TFC have either let slip away or they've not even touched in the first place, right? They just haven't identified it. And, with the amount of money that they do pour into that academy, it's not as if they're neglecting it from a resource standpoint. So they've never figured that out. I think it's absolutely time. Jordan's right to really start getting that right. It's not easy and it's going to take time, but it would be incredibly fruitful for this club if they can do it. There's a bigger question as well, I think, just with MLSE. Like, things are changing there. The leadership's changed. You've got, Masai Ujiri leaving the Raptors, Brendan Shanahan leaving the Maple Leafs. Obviously, TFC are without a president and don't seem to plan on hiring a new one to replace Bill Manning. So I think they're going to go with the current structure. There's just a lot of change there. I think there's going to be a lot of change in terms of the amount of money that they're willing to spend, and that's going to affect what kind of model this club is compared to what it's been in the past, signing kind of high-profile, big-name players. So I think some of that is still to be kind of seen as things unfold here in the coming months, but it's going to be different for sure. I think it's going to be more like a Whitecaps, a Philadelphia, Cincinnati than a Miami, LAFC type model going forward to TFC.
I'm intrigued to see what BMO will look like at their next home game. And thank you, Ollie, for that multi-sport knowledge. It's a really good point. I think you have to bring other teams in, especially from MLSE, into the mix. This was fun. Thank you guys for having me for my first.
Good job, Mac.
Thanks for joining, Mac.
Thanks. Yeah, yes, right. That was great. We'll wrap up there. Thank you all for watching. One Soccer Direct will be back tomorrow, so maybe we'll see you then.